you found out your child has autism, what was the reaction?
I was actually relieved. I wasn't sad. I wasn't mad. I wasn't angry. I was happy. The reason why I was happy was because as a parent, you have like an intuition. You know, when you become a parent, there are no rules or no instructions on how to raise your children or how to even be a housewife or anything. You just kind of learn how to manage that based on your intuition, based on what you think is best for your child or the people you love. And I was so relieved because for that piece, I knew that it confirmed my intuition and my gut feeling. I saw the changes in him at about 10 months when he was still an infant, where he was just so, like, he's so smart and he just loves the alphabet, and he kept on rehearsing the alphabet, and he knew his alphabet by the time he was 12 months, 1 year old. And I definitely knew he was gifted, and I knew that he was also very talented because he was able to repeat and memorize a lot of nursery rhymes. As he got a little bit older, like about 14 months, he was having a hard time telling me what he wanted. And also, like, with my husband and with his grandparents, he would, you know, get frustrated really easily because he wasn't able to verbally communicate. So I knew that there was something going on, like maybe a speech delay or just something that would help him that I needed to find out. And I think as he got older, from like 10 months to 16 months, he would be really good at zooming out and just kind of like focusing on his nursery rhymes and like whatever you said or whatever you asked him to do. He was just so focused on his music that he didn't understand or see. He did understand, but he was just so focused and stimulated that he didn't see his surroundings. And so that was when we found out that we needed to get him tested for autism and other related conditions, because he had some symptoms of autism, like signs, just, you know, with the no eye contact, the speech delay, just really frustrated not being able to communicate. He's a really bright boy. And I think when we got the diagnosis, I was so happy because that's when the diagnosis opens the door for tools and support and resources for your child. And so that was all I wanted. I just wanted to know what I can do to help them as much as I can from a medical perspective versus an educational perspective.
For me, I found out I had that back in 2014, but for me, it was an adult.
Mm-hmm.
But as a kid, my parents never took me to those tests back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So to them, they don't know anything. But for me, after I found out, I was kind of happy, relieved, because I figured out that I did have these back then, but I wasn't sure. But now, after I found out, okay, so I had noticed, I kind of did more research about adults who has that. So now I'm just can't help through my therapist.
Mm-hmm. That's good that you're able to get that diagnosis.
Okay, the second is, are your parents supportive of this diagnosis? Are they concerned that the Hmong family will find out that their grandchild has this condition?
Yeah, so when I saw the signs and symptoms, it was really hard for my husband to believe me, because also at this time I was my job consisted of autism services, and it consisted of helping families identify symptoms and just kind of like seeking resources to help to direct them where to go to get that help. When I explained that to my husband, he was really upset at me because he said that I lived and breathed autism. I'm always like overanalyzing everybody that I meet to see if they're on the spectrum. That was just his assumption. I don't do that, by the way. Just wanted to clarify that. I think because he felt maybe offended, and he was just upset that I even considered that our son might be autistic. He said that we can wait it out until he's a little bit older. So we waited out until he was 18 months because I started having those concerns at about 15 months. So we scheduled it, which was nice. And we got seen right away. Prior to that, we decided to have separate meetings with each side of our families. It was really hard, actually, for both grandparents. As much as they love my son, they love us, and they want the best for their children and grandchildren, they were not supportive at all. My mom and dad didn't understand autism because we have another nephew that is autistic, that's nonverbal. He just has a really hard time with like sensory input, and their family didn't recognize to get him services until he was much older. That really delayed some of his developmental piece of, understanding things and trying to like process to communicate. And so my parents were like, your son is not like that. He's not autistic. I'm like, and I try to explain to them, like, I don't know if he is, but I just need him to get a professional examination. And I was trying to explain to them, it's called a spectrum for a reason, because one size does not fit all. And, that's why it's called a spectrum. And I was giving my parents examples of people that are famous that are in the spectrum, that are super intelligent. And I talked about like Silicon Valley, how like people are just like supercomputers. And I wish I had that gift. I wish I had that skill set. And because they noticed that my son is gifted, and that's why they were confused about autism. And so I just told them, let me just go get the diagnosis. And if he's not, he's not. And if he is, then we'll talk about what we're going to do as parents and share that with you guys later. It was really hard for my mom because she thought that once he gets the diagnosis, he'll be on medication. And she believes that Western medication actually, especially for behavioral health, actually makes you even more depressed, which can be true in some side effects for some medications, and that we're going to be poisoning his body at such a young age because he was not 2 yet. And I told her he's not going to get medicated. We're just looking for a diagnosis so we can figure out what options and supports there are out there. And first of all, there's no medication for autism. For anything, like I was explaining to them, he needs like just extra supports to help him to be able to communicate and to just be able to regulate his emotions and to talk about how he feels, So that was just really important for me to kind of stand by our feet firm to my parents. And then when I shared publicly that my son was on the spectrum on social media, just because I was just struggling with myself from my cultural lens, I was struggling with my families. I wanted other people to understand that it's okay to get help and it's okay to seek services. And then especially in the Hmong community, like, stop the stigma, stop making it seem like we just push everything under the rug and that they'll be okay and that we're going to end up taking care of our own adult children who may need some support forever. Because my understanding is that I'm not going to be here forever. My husband's not going to be here forever. The only reason why we're doing this is because we want him to have the best life that we could have possibly given him, make him as independent as he wants to, give him the freedom to have his choices in life. That was kind of like our rationale to my parents. And then when we told my in-laws, my husband's parents, they live with me, by the way, they were like, no, he's okay. Like, he talks and he's fine. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, maybe you're just going a little crazy. Like, they just thought I was just like, there's this term in Hmong where they say, I don't know if you know a lot of Hmong, but they say, "O nyana," meaning that like I make a lot of decisions on my own and that like I'm very bold, which I find a good thing. I don't find it a bad thing, but for Hmong elders, it's a bad thing to have a voice, especially if you're a woman and you are married. But my husband supported me through this, and they were just really upset and they just didn't understand it. But I was just like, don't worry about it. It's our child. We'll do what we can. And if he does have it, that's fine. If he doesn't, we'll just continue to put him in like preschool or whatever, just to help him engage. But I didn't really say anything to us and kind of left it at that. When he did get diagnosed, they were like, what? How is he autistic? And I explained to them about like, how he likes to repeat certain things and how he has problems with social communication skills and emotional regulation. And, in the Hmong way, as much as I can. And I reassured both families that he won't get medication. I think the hardest part was once we found out he was diagnosed and we bought a house, we had to be the family to make that decision to see if we wanted in-home therapy or center-based, because we have a cultural lens and we just really value family. And in my household, I have intergenerational family members that live with me which is my husband's parents, and then my kids, and then our brother-in-law. So I wanted to focus on the home environment first. So we made the decision to have in-home supports. And it was kind of weird for my in-laws because, you know, when you are in your house, it's your own privacy, right? Your own space, your own entitlement to whatever you want to do without anybody invading your boundaries. And it's very private. And because my in-laws live with me, it was really hard at first for them to allow strangers to come in every day to see my son and help them. But I would say probably about like 4 months down the line of the services beginning to help, they saw so many changes in him. Like he was able to communicate. He was able to like start telling them like what he wanted, and he was able to express his feelings. And so I think because they have seen that, and my in-laws have been a part of this journey, because my son, he's currently 3, he turns 4 in April. He's even with the pandemic, we resumed services for him just because he actually told us he misses his teachers and he misses his therapists. And the other question was, you said if they're concerned about other Hmong family finding out. They were. I think they were, like when I said I posted about my son being autistic, they were really mad. Like they're like, you don't need to tell the whole world. I was like, I'm not. But I told my dad. My husband and I had a conversation with my dad saying that it's okay because we did this, and now parents are Hmong parents, especially ones that don't know resources, are resources. And you know, because they're like, how did you overcome the stigma? How did you overcome to become brave? And I think everything happens for a reason. And I think the more vocal you are and the louder you can make rain, just to advocate for people, the better changes you can do for the community. It's nice to see individuals that are dealing with it themselves, like whatever battle they go through in life, plus families to be on that page to support each other and to help each other try to understand. So for my parents and my in-laws, at first they were really worried, but now that they've seen so many changes, they actually support and tell other families, especially the ones that they're related to, that you should, you know, call my daughter, or you should call the school and see if there's any services that can help your child. I think it's interesting that I kind of flipped the switch around with my parents, my in-laws, that they understand autism, they just really don't know what it is yet, but they do know that my son is not neurotypical, and that's fine because I want him to be just him. And I'm not shy. They know, my parents and in-laws know that we're not shy to discuss and advocate for our child, especially with our cultural lens. It's just such a barrier. And we don't want, like, I don't know about you, you know, going through it growing up, but we don't want any trauma with my son where he feels like he can't talk about being autistic. Can I ask you a personal question? Are you open when people ask you about it, or do you feel kind of still shy? I'm just asking from a parent perspective because I don't want my son to ever feel discouraged to talk about who he is, what he has. I want him to be able to embrace it and be the voice and fight for whatever, if that makes any sense.
For me, I have no problem if someone asks me about it. I just tell them, yes, I have it, and then I'm getting help, and I'm doing things as a normal person does. So for me, I have no issue with that.
Mm-hmm. I know you don't like to be on camera. My son doesn't either sometimes. Can I just ask a question from a learning perspective? Is it because it's just too overstimulating for you? Like, it's just too much? Or you just prefer to not be on camera? Just so I understand and respect that.
That's like a yes and no. It seems like I'm more shy if I'm in front of the camera.
Oh.
And I always tend to look away because I don't like looking at the camera. But if it's like a picture, if I get in a picture, I'm okay with getting a picture with like a famous person. Mm-hmm. And then for that, it's a bit different for me. But other than that, if I'm ever on a webcam, I always have to look away because I just kind of like to look somewhere else because I'm not more of in a camera. And so if I have to be on camera, I just either turn it off or I just turn it on, but I just do a wave And so at least they know that I'm there.
Okay.
And then question 3 is, do you think there are many programs for children with autism, especially in the Hmong culture?
No, there's not. We know that nationally in the Western European, any kind of autism support, when you talk about like culturally specific, for especially in the Hmong community, we do not have it. It's because no one, like a lot of people in our community, in the Hmong community, did not know this kind of job or this kind of system was there to support. And because I think a lot of our older generation shied away from mental health stigma and from supports, that it kind of steered people away from going into this field, especially the Hmong folks. There's a lot of mental health providers that I know that are in the Hmong community are more of like licensed psychologists that focus more on like trauma and adult stuff, less children's stuff. And so I think if you have a provider that you work with that's, even though they're not like specific to Hmong children or Hmong culture, as long as they're open to culture and diversity of like being manageable, focusing on person-centered, family-centered, we've made it work really well with our therapists. All our therapists are white. The company is white-owned. It's a big company. They don't have a lot of people of color as therapists. One Hispanic and one Hmong guy, but they didn't last long. It was unfortunate. My son really enjoyed being around guys because most of his providers his therapists are all females. We worked with them, me and my husband, just talking about like our family expectations and just our culture norms. Like we share that with them, and also the preference names of what he calls my in-laws, Papa and Yaya, which means grandma and grandpa and Hmong. And so they do cater, even though they don't speak Hmong and English is their primary language, they actually try. And that's what I love about the company that my son is going through, is because they really try and meet us in the middle. And I don't know about other providers, but I wish there was more providers that were able to do that, especially going in-home therapy. Like I would love to see like a Hmong autism center one day, like a Hmong owned but open to everybody, not just Hmong, but like culturally open to everybody. So there is that diversified skill set of recognizing. And also I think if we had more people that looked like us in the professional field, more families that are trying to trust strangers to come into their homes or to do things with their children may be more comfortable, right? And they may be more accepting and also maybe more open to the idea and opportunities.
For me, I would like to try a provider who is Hmong. For now, my provider is a female white, and she can talk English, and it's easy for me to understand, and I'm able to talk to her in English, and we always communicate. So
one thing for sure is that I like working with BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color population, because especially in the mental health field, because they understand from a trauma, like a historical trauma level, a ancestry level, a intergenerational trauma level. It's a background of the cultural piece, and maybe some of them may have gone through it too themselves. And that's why I prefer a BIPOC mental health provider if it was for me and my children. But like you said, sometimes there are resources that are limited too, so you can't really choose. But it'd be awesome if one day someone can like create their like Hmong focused or Asian focused or just something, but accept any race, I love the Somali community. They've been doing such an amazing job because a lot of them have taken the initiative to open up centers to help the children that are autistic, and they're really close-knit community, just like the Hmong community. But yet everybody knows everybody, and they're just doing what they can with all the parent supports and the resources that they have, and they're turning it into something very beautiful.
That was mentioned on Monday's Zoom with Mar, because I'm part of the multicultural program that Mar does Monday nights on Zoom. So in that group, there's some who are smart, with child, they talk about that too.
That's good. I'm glad you're part of that. I know Barnes actually invited me to be like a part of the Facebook group, but I don't think I've ever been any of the meetings. I'm really excited for you to be a voice of an individual who has autism that you're able to represent from your lens and your lived experience culturally and throughout your life.
I signed up for the workshop for Autism Society on Wednesdays.
Uh-huh.
I'm on Zoom with the society, and we all talk about the autism, and they send the email all of the class, the PowerPoint slide or anything before class.
Mm-hmm.
And for that workshop, it was kind of interesting because the class it's mostly teenage and mid-20s, 30s, but I'm the only one that's the oldest in the class. And I can have more knowledge, and I just can share my experience to the class on Wednesday nights.
Great.
The Hmong community, I mentioned that her video, and especially old generation, to inform or teach them this is a mental health issue and the child needs help and support from the parents.
I think also with COVID right now, it's just so hard to meet in person, right? But I think that using the platform like Shadow or Man or just like other technology platforms, if we did like a live Q&A too, like a live question and answer, an open family virtual meeting, I think that would be really nice to have a support in the community. Because for me, I feel like the Hmong community does not have enough support. When I was going through it as a parent and looking for support from another Hmong parent, just to ask them how did they like overcome the issues of dealing with like the extended family not accepting some of these things, I needed that the most, and nobody wanted to talk to me. Everybody just kind of like did their own thing. And if we were able to help each other, empower each other to know that this is not a bad thing, it's just we got to figure it out to help our kiddos, I just wish that more of that message was conducted in the Hmong community. Because I know, like, I get a lot of connections with my previous job when I was in the autism field. I met with a lot of different schools, especially St. Paul Public School teachers and people from, like, Help Me Grow. They had Hmong parent support, too, like, on certain nights. And they also struggled with, like, getting families to come to these parent support groups. Because, that's not the typical norm a lot of Hmong people do, especially if they're traditional. And not just that, but they might be busy with other kids, other family obligations. But it is also a struggle, is to get people to incentivize them to come into the meetings and to even, like, be a part and participate, and if they're ready to share those stories or ask questions. There used to be this amazing Hmong group on Facebook. It's still active, but it's not as active. It's called Hmong with Special Needs. The person that was in charge of it, she took a step down. She was really passionate about it because of like her life, and she just stepped down from doing the organizing and stuff, and it hasn't been active since then. Like, they had really good intentions, and we actually did meet up. Like, we went to like their annual picnics and we played games and had a lot of fun. I just wish that there was more of that out there in the community, but she was able to bring families together. Her credibility and her genuine, authentic self, and just allowing people to trust her. Do you have any friends that are Hmong that are also on the spectrum?
My brother-in-law, he's on the spectrum, but he's seen as me high function. So he drives the car and goes to work, and his parents are supportive. For him, he has no problem. He just do the same thing as I do. Just go to work, drive the car, do anything when we don't have any issues. So for me, that's the only one I know of that has that.
Do you guys ever get together or see each other often?
And for him, no. It just mostly just me and my brother. But since he's married with 3 kids, I really see to talk to him because he has a family, and for me, just me and my two cats, I'm just kind of by myself.
Right. Which makes sense. Yeah, I think it would be so nice if we could just work with other folks and find that. But I think a lot of times, based on how we were raised, people don't really want to come out to do that in person. And maybe we could take advantage of that from a COVID perspective and use the online platform, you know?
My brother is okay with Zoom, but our parents and his parents, they don't know what Zoom is. And they're not computer tech, so they prefer the old way, the flip-flop phones. That's how they prefer that way instead of Zoom. So that's the only challenge we have.
Right. Were your parents ever supportive of you getting services, or were they kind of like, because I remember like last time we talked, it was just really hard for you to tell them. And do you think, and I don't think you ever told them, so is it because you feel that they won't accept you, or is it just something you don't want to talk about from your cultural experience? I just want to know as a parent, so when my son gets older like you, I don't ever want him to feel like that, you know? I want him to be able to share everything with me and not be feeling like he has to hide himself to me with like any secrets or just feelings in general. So any advice or tips would be helpful.
They were okay when they found out that I had a learning disability, hearing loss, and I was in IEP. But back then, it was before autism came along. They were okay with that, and then now my brother tried to tell them that I have this, and I have ADHD and depression and CAD, all these things. My brother was just telling that they don't believe that, and they don't accept that right now. And to them, they use the term lazy, because they think that those are considered lazy in the Hmong culture. So for now, I don't talk to my parents about those issues right now until later on, and then hopefully they'll learn it from a class or from church or someone that they'll be able to tell them this is what we want to tell you and show you about your child or your grandchild may have this.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's easier if maybe a professional or someone tell them rather than the kids. And they probably believe more from a professional person or someone else outside the family.
Yeah, I think you do that when you're comfortable and when you feel like it. I'm just sorry that your parents weren't as supportive of the outcome, and that's your parents showing you that they're in denial. A lot of parents say that in general about any excuse and call you lazy, because my parents did that to me when I was younger, and I've heard them do that to my siblings too. So don't feel like you're the only one being attacked because of your diagnosis. That's just Hmong family that we need to figure out how to integrate and how to communicate with them. But you're doing a great job. You're independent, you have your own place, you drive, you have a job, and that's the best that any parent would want. You know, I would love my son to be in that position one day too.